Unveiling the intriguing tale. Chapter 11 to 15.
He compels me to feed him. Platters of food are presented and set on a table between the thrones. Aurelius and folk savor the array of dishes, and the other attendants around me also partake. Meats, cheeses, chocolates, fruits, and bread are spread out. There are sweet-smelling cakes and dips with vinegar. One feed him all these offerings, while perched on the armrest of the throne, my body angled toward him without actually touching him. However, regardless of how careful I am to hold the food without dropping any, he draws my fingers into his mouth, licking them and even brushing my nails with his teeth. He snatches the piece of chocolate from my hand swiftly, his laughter ringing out as he munches on it, the treat staining his teeth as he licks them. "Your golden skin enhances the flavor of the food," he remarks. I sense the stares of the other attendants on me, analyzing, evaluating, sizing me up as a potential threat or someone seeking his attention. Meanwhile, Aurelius engages with more nobles. The spot beside his throne frequently filled as people vie for his time and attention. He hasn't glanced my way since I was handed over to folk. "Open," folk commands suddenly, drawing my gaze to his outstretched hand holding a slice of meat, its sauce dripping. When I start to shake my head, repelled by the idea of his fingers near my mouth or contaminating my food, folk arches an eyebrow in a questioning manner, a clear demand for compliance. "Act properly tonight," my lips part slightly, and folk presses the meat into my mouth with more force than necessary. He attempts to insert his fingers afterward, but I turn my head and close my mouth firmly. A smirk crosses his lips. "You're quite the naughty one." I feel Aurelius's gaze on me, causing my shoulders to tense. No matter, it adds a touch of excitement to the evening, doesn't it? He proceeds to feed me bread, cheese, grapes, and more. I chew silently, watchful, my ribbons constricting. With a gesture, he duplicates his goblet, using his power, and has it filled with wine. A servant swiftly attends to it. "Let's toast to our night," he says before raising the goblet to his lips and taking a sip. I follow suit, taking a bitter gulp. Once folk tires of feeding me, he removes the goblets and signals for the food trays to be removed as well. I'm relieved that this ordeal is over. The food settles heavily in my stomach, and the lingering sensation of his touch, my fingers, troubles me. Yet, there's no reprieve, as folk points to his cheek. "Kiss me." My eyes narrow, and I feel my skin tighten as my fingers clench the fabric of my dress. When I don't move, folk's eyes flicker with impatience. He pinches my ear, tugging me closer until my lips touch his rough cheek. Unlike Aurelius's smooth skin, folk's cheek feels scratchy against mine. He holds me there with his grip on my ear, fingers and thumb squeezing, and then releases me with a chuckle. "See, that wasn't so difficult, was it?" Once free, I move away abruptly, almost tipping over the side of the throne. Folk catches me, his laughter deepening. No need to kneel just yet. My cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger. I want to escape. I yearn to return upstairs, back to my cage, with only the Gale widow's cries for company. Folk's grip lingers on my arms, his fingers tight enough to suggest possible bruises later. "I don't think you're close enough," he comments, and then abruptly places me on his lap. My rigid body awkwardly collides with his thighs. I manage to prevent leaning against his chest by gripping the armrests. I attempt to steady myself, but he grabs my wrist and guides my hand to his crotch. "Here, my golden pet." My eyes widen in shock, and my stomach churns. I feel his flaccid length beginning to stiffen under my touch. As much as I want to pull away, his grip on my wrist is unyielding. Despite living in a gilded cage, I've never felt so confined. "Your Majesty," Elara's voice interrupts, drawing his attention. She offers to dance for him, her sultry smile contrasting her exposed body. King Aurelius permits it, and Elara's provocative performance ensues. Folk releases my wrist, and I move my hand away as he focuses on Elara. "Watch her," he instructs, his voice uncomfortably close to my ear. "She's a skilled saddle. You could learn a thing or two from her about pleasing a man." The idea of being taught to please a man disgusts me. I suppress a sneer, my lip curling slightly. Elara's smile widens at Folk's praise, and she glances my way, perhaps gauging my reaction, yet I feel more relief than jealousy. She inadvertently provides a welcome diversion from his attention. My gaze catches the subtle signs of her injury. Beneath makeup, a bruise and a swollen nose, despite my intentions. I didn't intend to harm her so severely. She's a rather talented dancer. I murmur quietly, almost too softly to hear. "Of course, I'm a saddle," Elara replies matter-of-factly. As if that explains everything. I suppose it does. "I think we'll retire now, pet," Folk decides, turning his attention back to me, his gaze lingering on the line of my cleavage. "Up. I want you beneath me within the hour. As Aurelius intends to have you back by dawn." He grasps my arms, and I stand up, blood rushing back to my legs. "Go on, girl," he dismisses Elara. "I won't be needing you tonight." Elara acknowledges his command and departs, capturing the attention of other men in the room with her provocative departure. Folk turns to Aurelius, his hand still on my arm. "Good night," he says, a smirk on his lips. I'm eager to have her to myself. King Aurelius acknowledges his statement with a nod, his eyes briefly flicking to me. "Enjoy." His response feels dismissive, as though I'm a mere object for King Aurelius's pleasure. I turn my head away, unable to meet his gaze any longer. That tiny fissure of doubt deepens, a fracture in the foundation of trust I've built over a decade. Elara's dance provides a temporary reprieve from Folk's attention. Nonetheless, the mocking crowd intensifies, growing bolder and cruder as they hurl lewd comments toward us. Their vulgarity evokes anger, and my ribbons metaphorically clench like fists. I must remain strong. But Folk's touch on my backside alone makes me cringe. How can I endure any further contact? How can I proceed with this souvenir? I do not want this Nan to make physical contact with me. I am indifferent to his royal status. It matters not whether my own king exchanged me to Folk for the night, or if he emerged victorious in battle due to this arrangement. I reject this situation, and I will not passively accept it. I refuse to conform. I find it inconceivable that Aurelius could request or demand such a thing from me. I halt just before we reach the grand doors. King Aurelius and his guards remain oblivious for a moment, engrossed in the festivities. They are immersed in celebration and enthusiasm. As they begin walking towards the entrance, the group of 5 men eventually notices that I am no longer moving with them. They turn around, glancing back to where I stand a few steps behind. The king, while the last to turn, is the first to speak, his brows furrow in confusion. "Come here, my pet." My neck feels as rigid as stone. Yet I manage to shake my head. "No," I reply, and my voice resonates loudly. This is absurd, given the presence of 200 people and the continued music, though its notes are now intoxicated. Nonetheless, despite the crowd, my quiet utterance seems to have the effect of a thunderous avalanche, as it compels everyone to fall silent and strain to decipher the disturbance that ripples through the atmosphere. What did you just say?" King Aurelius questions. His jovial demeanor vanished. His dark eyes now glisten with disbelief and fury. I step back, my determination unwavering even as my anxiety intensifies. I hold the favor of the king. I declare raising my chin and speaking with conviction that contrasts with my trembling hands. Regardless of my appearance, I am not a possession to be expended. While I thought there was silence before, the current silence feels stifling. Even the wind outside seems to have ceased its whispers. I scan the surroundings, although I am uncertain why. Perhaps in search of an ally, yet I am bereft of any. The impending blow catches me off guard. As my head snaps to the side and a burst of pain, reminiscent of stars, explodes across my vision. I remain upright only because his grip is fastened at the back of my dress, inadvertently ensnaring a few of my ribbons within his knuckles. Folk twists me to face Aurelius, who advances with purpose. The crowd parting before him, a rushing river that cleaves through the earth. Is this how your subjects address royalty? Folk spews, spittle escaping his enraged mouth and splattering against the throbbing side of my face. As he shakes me, I should have her executed. Well, I granted you access to her body, not her life. Aurelius retorts calmly as he strides through the gaping crowd. My own feeble stream of tears trickles down my cheeks, pitiable droplets that hold no influence, falling uselessly to the ground by my feet. I am aware of the necessity to remain silent. I am aware of this, and yet I cannot restrain myself. I am already in jeopardy, so why not speak? What do I have to lose? Am I not worth more than this? I murmur softly, not to folk, but directed at Aurelius. This isn't about the gilded hue of my skin. It's about the affection of my heart. Shouldn't that hold more value, worth? King Aurelius hisses as he halts in front of me. His tone is subdued, but those in close proximity can still catch his words, causing everyone to press closer. Straining to absorb his message, you are more valuable than all the riches within this castle. Nevertheless, I retain ownership of you, and I will employ you as I see fit. I've never personally witnessed a heart shattering, but the sound seems akin to the spreading cracks on glass. Yet, you vowed to ensure my safety. You pledged that my heart would forever remain yours. I wish to articulate these sentiments, but I remain voiceless. My tearful eyes reverberate with the unspoken truth of these words. Though my king remains oblivious, Aurelius casts a glance towards his associate. My apologies, King Aldaric. Please pardon her innocence. I have always indulged her. She shall not transgress again. It's unclear whether folk is mollified, for I cannot bring myself to look at him. Aurelius's gaze shifts to the guards behind me. Accompany Yolanda to King Aldaric's chambers. No. Impelled into action, I endeavor to wrench myself away. Yet I am dragged forward by two of Folk's guards, their efforts seemingly effortless. Sandwiched between the guards adorned in purple-hued armor, I am consumed by anger and shock. I hurl curses relentlessly, yet their grip remains unyielding. King Aldaric strides ahead of us as we traverse the entry hall, guiding us towards the grand staircase situated at the far end of the room. However, before we can reach it, the main doors abruptly swing open, admitting a soldier clad in Folk's armor. Guards stationed at Aurelius's behest shout for the soldier to halt, but he ignores their commands upon spotting Folk, sprinting towards his king. His weighty purple cloak bears traces of snow and ice. His boots muddied by frozen sludge, he skids on the floor during his sprint. Though he maintains his footing, my liege, Folk halts, his brow furrowing. What is the meaning of this interruption? The bedraggled soldier comes to a halt with a puzzled expression, standing before us. The disheveled soldier is forced to lean over slightly, panting heavily in order to regain his breath before addressing Folk. Frost encrusts his chest plate, while his visage is red and chafed from the biting wind. "From where are you reporting, soldier?" queries one of Folk's guards, stepping forward to shield the king with a defensive stance. "Fourth Kingdom's border, sire." The soldier replies. The guard's brow furrows. "And where is Gromes?" The soldier shakes his head. The messenger met his end in combat. The general attempted to dispatch 2 additional messengers, yet I was the sole individual able to mount a timberwing and escape before our aerial assault was thwarted. I flew throughout the day and night. Amidst the raucous laughter emanating from the ballroom, a few inebriated revelers stumble into the hall, their hands groping blindly, oblivious to their surroundings. A mere second later, Aurelius strides towards us, accompanied by 6 of his own guards, a number that includes Thorn. He offers the messenger a single glance, his countenance darkening. "Join me in privacy, King Aurelius. Let us convene away from the eyes and ears of the revelers," Aurelius suggests, nodding towards the chamber designated for correspondence, positioned to the left. I silently hope to evade their attention, but the guards refuse to release me. Instead, I am hauled down a brief corridor, directed away from the staircase, and our assembly proceeds into the room within. Scattered tables and chairs fill the space, accompanied by parchment, candles, inkwells, wax, and quills, all at the disposal of anyone needing to draft letters. The door closes behind us, enclosing me with 2 kings and a total of 10 guards. The messenger appears no more composed than he was upon bursting through the doors. If anything, he's now breathing even more heavily, his gaze nervously darting about the room as he positions himself behind a gilded table. "Speak, then," demands King Aurelius. "I desire an explanation for my messenger's demise and for your presence here." Dispatched from the border, the messenger's hands quiver slightly. Whether from nervousness or exhaustion, I cannot ascertain. "If I could discuss this with you privately, Your Majesty." Falk's dark eyes narrow suspiciously in response to his request. "Are you a traitor, soldier? Have you defected?" The messenger's eyes widen. "What? No, Your Highness." "Then clarify yourself," Falk roars, pounding his fist against the table, causing both the messenger and myself to flinch. Resolute determination settles upon the man's countenance, even as he tightens his grip on his sword's hilt. "The moment your forces breached Fourth's border, King Ravinger's troops launched an assault. Your entire fleet suffered defeat, sire." King Aurelius knits his brows. "You are mistaken. Our troops successfully pierced Fourth's defenses this very morning. Cliff Helm has been secured. With the combined strength of our 6 kingdom allies, victory was achieved. Fourth was caught off guard. The terms of our agreement are already in place." The messenger glances around the room, his gaze alighting on a composed and inscrutable Aurelius before returning to Falk. "No, Your Majesty, no," Falk repeats, as though unfamiliar with the concept. "What does this no signify? We did not seize Cliff Helm. King Ravinger's training outpost was fortified with soldiers. Our forces never breached the walls before they descended upon us." One of Falk's guards curses, while Falk clenches his fists by his sides. "Are you implying my entire division was wiped out?" The messenger hesitates. "Yes, Your Majesty." And King Aurelius grabs one of the ink bottles and hurls it against the wall, causing the glass to shatter and the ink to spatter and drip. "And what?" Falk cedes. "Speak plainly. Something is awry. A grave error has transpired." They were celebrating. Their plan was triumphant. I furrow my brows, my mind racing. What transpired between then and now? How could such misinformation have been disseminated to the kings earlier? Or is the soldier before us fabricating falsehoods? But if so, for what reason? The messenger's grip on his sword's hilt tightens beneath his king's stern gaze, and I am not the only one to notice. "What are you attempting, soldier?" queries one of King Aurelius' guards, his tone laced with suspicion as he inches closer to his blade. However, the messenger's attention is not on him. He's not even looking at Folk. His gaze is fixed upon Aurelius. My body tenses. My instincts screaming that impending doom is imminent. Yet the nature of this impending calamity remains obscure. Explain to me how we were informed of capturing Cliffhelm this very morning, only for you to now proclaim that my men were massacred. Folk snarls. Elucidate how Ravinga's forces managed to overpower both my soldiers and Aurelius's without our knowledge. Folk's guards close in on the messenger, akin to a pack of wolves sensing deception, a falsehood, yet they are fixating on the wrong individual. The messenger lifts his chin, adopting a posture of defiance. Even as a hint of resignation flickers in his eyes, Aurelius's forces were never overpowered, for his troops never engaged with ours. The Six Kingdoms army did not journey to the Fourth Kingdom's border. Your soldiers confronted King Ravinga's forces alone, and the earlier messages were a fabrication. Suspicion-laden eyes pivot towards my king. Aurelius betrayed you. For a brief moment, everyone in the room remains motionless. The messenger's proclamation fills the space with stunned silence. The guards surrounding both kings tighten their formations. King Aurelius wears a puzzled frown, responding to the messenger's claim, but Aurelius stands confidently, locking eyes with Folk, exuding an air of satisfaction. Folk's expression transitions from confusion to shock, and then to anger as the gravity of the situation sinks in. The world seems to settle after the upheaval caused by this revelation. King Aurelius's voice cuts through the tense atmosphere, lashing out at the messenger, while guards grip their blades with the emblem of their kingdom etched onto the hilt. Merely minutes ago, these men shared camaraderie, laughing and drinking together. Now, tension crackles as they confront one another. Allies transformed into adversaries, and former enemies now turned allies. Aurelius, unperturbed by the danger in the air, calmly delivers a cutting retort, dismissing Folk's claim to leadership. The words hang heavy, with an air of impending conflict. The shock on my face mirrors Folk's as the truth unfolds. The monarch of the Fifth Kingdom scrutinizes Aurelius with newfound clarity, peering beyond the facade of wealth and opulence. You never intended to seize the Fourth Kingdom, he intones, his voice flat with comprehension. Aurelius chuckles, mocking the other king's audacity. Certainly not. No one dares attack the Fourth Kingdom, as King Ravinga crushes all challengers. Folk's guards bristle with hostility, their expressions hardening with contempt, as the realization hits me. A shiver of horror courses through my veins. The extent of Aurelius's manipulation becomes clear. Years of fostering a connection with Folk, seducing him with riches, while Folk unwittingly transported gold on his behalf, all for the purpose of executing a covert plan. The brilliance and brutality of this scheme are apparent. The outcome is inevitable. Only one king will leave this room alive. Folk's lips tighten, a bead of sweat forming on his temple as he acknowledges the truth. Whether in understanding or resignation, he maintains a steely glare as the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. The room teeters on the precipice of chaos. Without warning, the command to attack erupts, plunging the room into a battle. I am abruptly shoved to the ground, a woven rug breaking my fall. Clashes of metal resound as guards clash, crimson spatters follow, and swords meet in a dance of violence. The sudden outbreak of violence jars memories loose, connecting past and present. I'm transported back a decade to a night when raiders pillaged my village. The cacophony of swords clashing triggers the memory of a tavern song. I try to drown it out, covering my ears. As the past merges with the present, a body falls onto me, and I struggle to free myself from its weight. It's only when the lifeless figure is dislodged that I realize the extent of the carnage. Before I can process further, I'm hauled to my feet. A blade pressed menacingly against my throat, King Aurelius' rage spills over as he confronts me, his erratic movements causing the blade to graze my skin. The threat of death looms close, personified by Folk's cold breath against my neck. In an instant, Thorn intervenes, impaling Folk and pulling me to safety. My vision narrows, my heart races, and the shock of the situation sends me spiraling. Bloodied bodies litter the floor, a grim tableau of death. Folk's forces, including the messenger, lie lifeless. The room reeks of violence. And Aurelius and his 2 remaining guards stand victorious, their blades stained red. As hail beats against the windows, I meet Aurelius's gaze. Struggling to comprehend the events that have transpired, my mind wavers, and my consciousness flickers, overwhelmed by the horror before me. Aurelius's command sends me back to my chambers, carried by Thorn's unyielding grip. His steady steps offer a semblance of reassurance amidst the chaos. I cling to the idea that Thorn's presence saved me from a gruesome fate. In the quiet solitude of my room, illuminated by flickering candles, I contemplate the night's events. The memory of the dead king's breath against my neck lingers, a haunting reminder of what could have been. The weight of the night crushes me, and I grapple with the profound reality of the situation. Staring at the bloodied slippers that bear evidence of my proximity to death, I seek solace in an ironic bright side, that I was spared from a terrible fate, yet it's a pitiful silver lining in a nightmarish scenario. The stillness of the night wraps around me, and I wonder if I'm somehow obscured from the eyes of fate, hidden away beneath a blanket of perpetual darkness. In this contemplation, I pass the time, allowing the impact of the night to settle. The sound of a key fitting into my door pulls me from my thoughts. Several sets of footsteps come near as servants file into my cage, one after the other. They walk past me, steps determined, as they head for my bathroom, steam rising from buckets in their arms. A minute later, they all walk right back out silently. The cage closing again, my bedroom door shutting. I don't turn, don't move, but I wait, listen. I can feel him behind me, watching, but I keep my back straight, keep my eyes on the window, to the blizzard raging outside. Finally, Aurelius walks over. A dark silhouette that stops in front of me a few paces away. He waits for a beat. And although I can't see his eyes, I feel the trace of them. Feel them land on the slash over my throat. Aurelius takes 3 slow steps and then offers his hand, holding it in front of me, waiting. I don't take it. Let me get you cleaned up, precious. My eyes lift up to his face. I still don't take his hand. His expression fills with remorse. I know, he says hoarsely. I know, but let me explain. Let me, I want to hold you, take care of you. Let me help you, Ilander. That slowly creeping crack spreading up from the gash in the glass. It halts, waits, wonders, because Aurelius said those words to me before, let me help you. Is that why he's using them now, to remind me? When I was on the streets, I slept during the day and crept around at night, hungry, orphan, afraid. Always, I was too scared to buy anything, to approach anyone. I did so only when it was absolutely necessary. I wandered alone, stayed hidden. It was the only way a girl like me could stay safe, to make sure I didn't end up right back in the same situation I'd escaped from. Bad men. The world was run by bad men. And as much as I tried to lay low, to be invisible, I couldn't, I wasn't. I knew better than to stay too long in one place. I knew better, but I was tired. Worn down, I slipped up, got sloppy. I knew it was just a matter of time before something bad happened to repay me for it. The looters came that night, with fire and axes. They took the village I was hiding in, the one I should have left behind days before. They took everything and anything they wanted. The farmers who lived there didn't stand a chance, didn't have any defensive training. They didn't even own weapons other than their pitchforks and shovels. I tried to run. Too late. I was far too late. Pulled from an alleyway. I was shoved into a cart with the other women who'd been dragged from their beds. They screamed and cried, but I was silent, resigned. I knew it was over for me. I knew there was no way I'd escape. Not again. The fates don't give second chances, so I steeled my spine. And I readied myself to face the life I'd tried to run from. And that's when he came. Aurelius. Like the goddesses themselves had sent him. Riding in on a dappled grey horse with a half-dozen other men. At first, I thought the shouts were just continued fighting from the villagers. A last-ditch effort to defend their homes. But then I saw the looters being cut down. And then the cart was opened and the women were running, sobbing again this time, with tears of terrified relief. But I had no family to reunite with, no one to run to. So I staggered back to that alleyway. Tense shoulders collapsed against a rough stone wall. I didn't believe it was over so quickly. Didn't trust it, but I thanked the stars all the same. At some point, the sounds of the fighting stopped. The fires tossed on thatched roofs were put out. The clinging smoke in the air, the only thing warming my thin, bedraggled body. And then a lone figure appeared in the alley. I cowered against stacked crates until he stopped in front of me. And I looked up at his handsome face. He smiled at me, not a jeer, not a cruel tilt of lips. A genuine smile. It was warm. Just looking at it stopped my ceaseless shaking. He held out a hand while that smile stayed on his face. "You're safe now. Let me help you." And I was. And he did. From that moment on, he kept me safe. When I wanted to hide from the world, he gave me his cloak and hood. When I shied away from other people, he made sure we stayed separate. When I clung to him, he held me. And when I kissed him for the first time, he kissed me right back. "You're safe now. Let me help you." I was done being exposed and vulnerable in the world. So he made sure I didn't have to be anymore. Swallowing hard, I look up at Aurelius as our past settles around me. Like he's once again leading me out of that dark alley. Like he's reminding me where we've come from, of what he did for me. He earned my trust, my love, my loyalty. I wouldn't be here, in this gilded cage, if he hadn't. Please, he pleads, surprising me. Aurelius never pleads. Not since he put a crown on his own head. I hesitate for a moment, but the past is a powerful thing. So my hand finally lifts, slips inside his grasp, and squeezes. That smile lights up his face as I let him pull me up. Let him guide me into the bathroom, and something in me warms slightly. My body stops shaking. Inside, a golden tub is filled. Tendrils of steam curling over the lip, oil poured into the water, making it smell of winterberries. He stops us in the middle of the room. The hanging sconce is already lit, casting everything in its comforting glow. The hanging mirror above the wash basin shows the two of us, shows Aurelius step up behind me. I feel his fingers skim up my spine before delving into my ribbons, each silken strand, still bound around me. Carefully, he unwraps me, layer by layer. My ribbons don't do anything to help him, and that they don't stop him either, don't rip from his grasp. He works slowly, taking his time with each pass, until the last of my long ribbons are let out, draping from my spine to the floor behind me. All the while, I watch him in the mirror, my heart beating quicker than usual. He helps me out of the saddle gown necks, his fingers never once straying, never crossing any sort of line except to simply help me undress. When the fabric falls at my feet, Aurelius looks at my eyes in the reflection of the mirror for a moment, before taking my hand once more and leading me into the tub. One leg over, then the next, and I sit down. The hot water shoulder deep, a few scattered bubbles mingling with the oil that seeps into my skin. I sigh. Aurelius sits on a stool beside the tub with a cloth in his hand, dipping it in the water before. His eyes come back up to look at me. May I? I don't answer or nod, but I tip my chin up slightly. And that's invitation enough. He reaches forward and gently begins to dab at the wound, the sting making me flinch. I'm sorry. His words are gentle, but steady, same as the swipes against my throat. For what part? I ask. My voice croaky from disuse or emotion, maybe both. The cloth is dipped again and again. New warm water to wash away the dried blood, to clean the cut. You weren't supposed to get hurt. My brows rise at his admission, even as indignant anger rises up, shouldering past the numbness I've felt for the last few hours. The slice against my throat is the least of them, I reply. And I mean it. I pull away from his ministrations and lie all the way back, dipping my head and hair beneath the water. With eyes closed, I let it envelop me, let it press into my skin. Let the warmth soothe my body like I wish it could soothe my aching heart. When I sit back up, I take a gulping breath and rest my head against the back of the tub, my eyes landing on Aurelius. I don't cover up the hurt and anger there, don't mask it from him. Aurelius nods, like he accepts what I'm silently telling him. I know, he says again, just like he did in the bedroom. I know what you're thinking. What I'm thinking isn't nearly as bad as what I'm feeling, but I don't say that. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, I tell him, my tone accusatory. And as nervous as I was, as gutted. Some part of me thought that you'd have a plan, that you wouldn't go through with it. My breaths come quicker, the waterline rising and lowering over my chest. My ribbons swim in the water, pulling tight around me once more, like they're trying to keep me from cracking to pieces. I trusted you, Aurelius. I trust us, after all these years. After all I've done. Aurelius grabs one of my hands, squeezing it between his face earnest. I was never going to let him touch you. I frown, my thoughts cut short. What? Just listen. He tells me, I knew folk coveted you. Hell, everyone knew. He was a fool. He dared to ask for what was mine. I blink, remembering the morning when folk asked for me, when they struck their deal. You set him up for it. Aurelius tilts his head. Did I? Is that what you think? My lips turn down, confusion swimming through me, making my thoughts murky. I don't understand. Aurelius hooks his foot around the leg of the stool, to move it closer, his hands still holding onto mine, the water droplets collecting on his palms. Folk is a flesh trader. Shock courses through me. What? Aurelius nods solemnly. I heard rumors, but I found out for sure months ago, when I was able to confirm it. I knew something needed to be done. I tried to keep up with his words, tried to make the connections. So you planned how to take him out? How to kill him? Aurelius's lips pressed together at my damning tone. Would you rather I let him continue to sell his own people for profit? That's not what I meant. Elander, I'm a king. And kings have to make hard decisions. When it became clear to me that Folk was no longer a viable ally, not even a good person, I decided to act. By setting him up, tricking him, by sending his men into a meaningless slaughter, I accuse. How many of his soldiers died? Aurelius, as few as possible, just enough to make it work. I scoff, as if that makes it any better. Better a man die with honor on a battlefield than a child be sold to slavery. Wouldn't you agree? Elander, a punch, that's what it is. His words punch into my stomach, against my heart, up my throat. He shreds me inside with a sentence, memories threatening to come up, to spill out my eyes. I did it for you, Elander, Aurelius says, quieter now, losing the defensiveness of his voice. To make sure they don't endure what you did. When a tear slips past my eye, he swears and wipes it away, his face earnest. I'm sorry. You know me, you know how I get. Once I get a plan in my head, it's all I see. I didn't stop to consider the consequences. I just knew I wanted him gone, done, to stop him once and for all. His hand comes up to cut my cheek, his eyes boring into mine. But listen to me when I say this. I was never going to let him have you. It was a ruse. My throat is dry, but I clear it so I can speak. Why not just tell me, then? Why not explain all this before so I knew? I was worried that he'd find out somehow. That you wouldn't be able to pretend. I needed folk complacent. Distracted. You did your part beautifully. I dropped my head. Shaking it. I was so damn terrified, so hurt. I don't know if I can get past that, like I said. I didn't think, he tells me, a stroke against my cheek before he drops his hand. You killed a king, Aurelius, used him to attack another. What are you going to do? I ask, the worry gnawing at my insides as my teeth gnaw on my lip. Don't worry about that, he tells me. I have a plan. I can't help the bitter snort that escapes me. I suppose you're not going to tell me it. Just like you didn't tell me that you were tricking old Derek about giving me to him. Aurelius sighs. I didn't dare say more. No one knows any of this. Elander, no one aside from you knew what I set up. And I have to play this next part just as carefully, just as meticulously. But I need you to forgive me, precious. I need you to understand. Do I understand? I'm relieved. I know that much. The coiled tension that's been inside me these past days has eased. He wasn't going to let folk have me. He had a plan. It was callous and thoughtless, but it makes sense. This is how Aurelius is, how he's always been. That strategic, brilliant mind of his sometimes falls short on emotions. He can scheme and plan like an expert. But he often forgets to consider how his actions affect the people he loves. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it does explain it, and I do trust him. It's clear in every choice I've made since meeting him. But will that trust ever be enough? To wipe away the memory of the last time I saw him, when he turned me away so coldly? Will I ever be able to forget the fear, the pain, the confusion that had swamped me as he ordered me out of his sight? I close my eyes, and I take a deep breath, letting it out slowly. I want to believe you, Aurelius, he exhales. The relief in his breath palpable. I'm glad, but that doesn't mean you're forgiven, not yet. When I open my eyes again, he's looking at me. That hope in his eyes, both touching and heartbreaking. I'm willing to work toward it. But I don't know if I'll ever get past the betrayal, the hurt. He looks down at the water, his fingers curling around the edge of the tub. I'm so sorry, Elander. I don't deserve your trust, I know that, and I won't push for it. But please know that every decision I make is with you in mind, everyone. I'm quiet as I watch him, watch his throat move, watch his eyes take in the water, the oil, my own body. I need to be alone. I finally tell him, to think, to process. His eyes snap back up to mine, a nod from him, of course. I'll be in the bedroom, I nod, not moving as he stands from the stall and walks away from me. The moment he's gone, I sink down further into the water, let it consume me. I close my eyes and let myself drift. Think about the things Aurelius has said. I let the water wrap around me, make me feel weightless, so I'm not so burdened. Even though I can't hear what's happening in the other room, I still feel his presence in my mind, his words echoing like they're in the room with me. I trusted you, Aurelius, I trusted us. I clutch my fingers over my throat, feel the raised skin, the small cuts around it. I blink and I'm back in the warehouse, still sitting on the floor. fingers gripping the edge of the broken mirror. I lift my chin, see Aurelius's face behind mine in the reflection. See his eyes looking down at me. "You're safe now. Let me help you." The words I clung to when I felt so broken, when I was so lost, when I felt so alone. He was my anchor. The man who brought me out of the shadows, out of the darkness. The man who made me feel cherished and loved and alive. I blink again, and I'm back in the warehouse, still sitting on the floor. My chin still lifted as I look up at his face in the mirror. My anchor, the man who brought me out of the shadows, out of the darkness, the man who made me feel cherished and loved and alive. My heart aches for him, aches for us. It's still there. The love I feel for him, the loyalty, it's still there. It's not as strong as it was, not as sure, but it's still there. I just don't know how to rebuild from this. How to take the broken pieces of our relationship and make them whole again. I let out a shaky breath, my fingers curling tight around the edge of the tub as I consider my options. As I try to figure out what comes next, I watch the guards amble around my bedroom, carrying out the last of the trunks that I filled earlier. My space looks emptier than usual. My dressing room with noticeable gaps, from where some of the gowns and shoes have been taken and packed away. Outside, dusk has fallen. It's nearly time to leave. It doesn't appear to be snowing out right now, but snow never stays away for very long here, which is why I'm dressed in a heavy woolen gown, complete with fur trim and sheepskin-lined boots. Everything is shiny gold, of course, right down to my thick leather gloves. My hair is coiled tightly against my head in countless braids, so that the wind won't thrash it around, kept out of the way so that my hood can conceal both my hair and my face. It's time. I turn away from the window to see Thorn standing ready on the other side of my cage. He looks gruff and quiet as usual. No hint of the man who ran a sword through a foreign king. No expression of worry, like when he carried me up 6 flights of stairs while covered in blood. But then, I appreciate that about him. His complete unruffled manner, his steadfastness. Unconsciously, I lift a hand and run my fingers against the newly formed scar at my throat, where King Aurelius tried to slit it 3 weeks ago. Thorn notices the movement, his eyes flicking down to my fingers, and I immediately drop my hand, trying to stop myself from that nervous fidget I've developed. Sometimes, my mind forces me to relive that moment in my nightmares, and I wake up screaming and clutching my throat, convinced that I'm suffocating on my own blood. Other times, my mind decides it would be a good idea to imagine what would have happened if that messenger had never shown up, if Folk had dragged me all the way to his bedroom instead, and Aurelius never came to stop it. Neither nightmare lets me get much sleep. That's probably why I have circles under my eyes, like bronzed bruises shaded above my cheeks. I wish Aurelius were here. 3 days. He could only stay for 3 days after the incident, and then he had to leave, he and a regiment of soldiers, to travel to Fifth Kingdom. I stood beside him in the throne room the night after Folk was killed, watched Aurelius's plan play out. As he wove a tale of what had happened, the people know about Aurelius's golden touch, but his golden tongue, to me, that's his true power. We were deceived. The room was quiet. The gathered nobles watching Aurelius with rapt attention, as the king and queen sat on their thrones with somber but determined faces, looking out over the gathered crowd. My ally, King Aurelius, is dead. Shock rippled through the people, wide eyes and open mouths spanning across the room. Aurelius waits a beat for the news to sink in, but not long enough for the whispers to start. King Aurelius wanted to stop rot from spreading over our borders, wanted to ensure that our territories were safe, and he was assassinated for it. I stood behind him, a step in front of the guards, My presence there meant to show a united front while Aurelius weaved his story. He sent his soldiers to the edge of Fifth Kingdom to do his duty to his people, but he was deceived by one of his own, one who slipped into enemy lands. King Auleric's regiment was killed in a brutal battle against false awaiting men. And as if that weren't treason enough, that same defector, that betrayer, flew back here to Hybel to deliver a message by murdering his own unsuspecting king. The mood in the room then ebbed, a tide stretching from horror to indignation. Aurelius motioned to someone behind him, and a guard came up, holding something wrapped in black cloth. With a nod from Aurelius, the guard unwrapped it and held it up for all to see. Gasps rang out. I couldn't even track how many. They were all repelled, and they couldn't look away. The guard held up the decapitated head of the messenger, the one who was guilty of no crimes. His head gleamed shiny gold, his gruesome, dying expression to forever live on in this frozen state, never able to deteriorate as a body should. The crowd gaped at the face of the messenger-made traitor. Aurelius watched the crowd. This, Aurelius said, pointing a hand at the cringing face. This is the kind of rot that is spreading from Fourth Kingdom. This is what King Aurelius was trying to staunch. Not just decimation and disrespect of our lands, but of disloyalty, distrust, treason against one's own kingdom and monarch. He was good, so very good at speaking, at drawing in a crowd, like a spider spinning a web. He caught them, each one. The head was wrapped up once more, no doubt to be forged to the front gates later, where all the gilded skulls of traitors stayed, exposed for the public to spit at, for the icy winds to batter. I shall go to Fifth Kingdom, Aurelius told them. I will assist them in their time of need, ensure that the land and people don't suffer with the loss of their king. I shall take King Auleric's seat, uniting our lands after his death. Even as we were allies while he lived, I will continue to keep our borders secure, to make sure the rot of outside kingdoms does not touch us, until the day his heir may come of age and take his father's seat. It didn't take long for the news of King Auleric's death to spread like a heavy snow, drifting over the land, coating every tongue. Aurelius managed to come out heroic, to give the people a villain to blame, while he gained more power in one fell swoop. And now, he sent for me to join him, though it's a secret. Most everyone thinks I'm already there in Fifth Kingdom, that I traveled with him. However, Aurelius didn't want me there until he deemed it safe, so he left me behind. But Aurelius knew that leaving me alone in the castle was a risk too, so he used a decoy. A woman traveled with his caravan, not gold-touched, but painted to look like me. In the meantime, I've been guarded day and night while I've waited. Not even the servants have been allowed up to these levels. Not even the Queen was told that I'm still here. The only people I've seen these past few weeks are the small number of guards, Thorn apparently handpicked to watch over me. But now it's time to go. Giving one last glance out the window, I turn away with mixed feelings roiling in my stomach. I head for Thorn, who's holding the cage door open for me, and I try not to show the apprehension on my face. Just as I pass through the threshold, I cast one last look at my cage, my eyes running over all of the things I've had around me every day for as long as I can remember. It's strange, but I feel a sense of loss when I turn away and follow behind Thorn and the other guards as they escort me out. My cage. I've relied on it for so many years. I resented it too, yes. But it was still a safe haven, one I'm now leaving. We take the stairs all the way down to the main floor, the five of us quiet, the castle itself subdued. When we make it to the bottom level, I can't help that my eyes dart to the right, seeking out the closed door to the letter room. I wonder which servants were made to clean the blood up. I wonder if those servants are still alive, or if they took those blood-soaked rags to the grave with them, because no, don't think of that now. Loyal, I'm loyal, forcing my eyes to peel away from that room. I see that the great doors leading to the dark outside are already open, letting gusts of chilled air blow in. Past the stone steps and courtyard, I can see a procession of carriages and horses waiting to take our party to Fifth Kingdom. Feeling the back of my neck prickling, I turn to see Queen Serafini standing on the second floor, her hand curved over the banister as she looks down at me. Her face is blank, sleek white hair coiled around her head like a crown, while her eyes watch me, watch with an intensity that makes my throat clog. Hate. That's hate in her eyes as she glares down at me, as she realizes that Aurelius lied, that I've been in the castle all this time, that I'm now going to him because he sent for me. If I were her, I'd probably hate me too. My lady, I turned back around, finding the guards waiting for me by the open door, one of them holding up a thick fur coat for me. Thank you, I murmur, taking it from his outstretched hand before I slip it on. I don't turn back to the queen, but I can feel her stare follow me all the way out into the night. I clutch the coat tighter. It's heavy but soft, the fabric lined with leather and fur to keep me warm during the brutal nights. I lift the hood over my head as I walk down the front steps, feeling the last of the castle's warmth leave me, but feeling the tension start to leave too. My chin tips up as soon as I pass the doorway, and my face points at the sky. 10 years, that's how long it's been since I've stepped foot outside. The cold wind drifts over me with a lazy current, whispering across my face like a gentle welcome. The guards share a look, their feet shifting from side to side as I stand there, not moving, but I ignore them, because this is mine, when I chose to hide away. I was barely more than a girl, vulnerable, battered, scared, utterly sick of what the world had to offer. So I hid in a cage, and I was content to do so. After the things I endured, I wanted it. I accepted the bars, embraced them, even not to keep me in, but to keep others out. But I miss this, the fresh air in my lungs, the smell of the breeze, the cold against my cheeks, the feel of the ground beneath my shoes. I missed it so damn much. My lady, one of the guards says hesitantly, we should go. I let my eyes scan the dark sky above me for one more moment. The clouds glowing grey before a hidden moon, but I swear, for one fleeting second, I see a glimpse of a star winking at me, so I wink back.
Subscribe for the next chapter.